Hello and a warm welcome to Federal Special Program Capital Beat. A parliamentary panel has recommended legislation to allow the CBI to probe matters of national security and integrity without requiring consent from state governments as part of reforms that are likely to be politically controversial. Now, another of the House Committee's suggestion is to allow lateral entry to the Central Agency for Specialists, and which, of course, is a measure which is likely to attract accusations of trying to bypass reservations. Their third key proposal is for the CBI to raise its own cadre through national recruitment agencies, which means that they will have a separate exam for the CBI officials, just on the lines of the IAS. Now, do these reforms strengthen CBI? Do they weaken the foundations of bureaucracy in general? We'll try and find out answers to these. Joining me now is a former IPS officer, somebody who's been a security expert. Thank you so much. And somebody who's been an intelligence officer himself. Yashovardhan Azad joins us on the Federal. Thank you so much, Mr. Azad, for joining. This parliamentary panel has submitted a report in Parliament saying that they are trying to bring in reforms. And the first bit where they are trying to do away with the general consent, they are and the explanation which they are giving, that in the non-BJP ruled states, the state governments don't give permission, and which is why they need a separate legislation to go ahead to investigate the corruption cases. What is this logic? Does it solve the purpose of bringing a separate legislation? And knowing already the fact that there are some 8 states which have already withdrawn the general consent from the CBI.
Well, there is a problem, let me say at the very outset, in fighting corruption in this country. First, there is very little conviction. Third, the corruption cases are long drawn out. Next, the CBI sometimes pursues some cases very relentlessly, and some of the cases are put on the back burner. So there is a problem. Now, ideally, it's a great situation that the central government or the CBI should be allowed to investigate cases of corruption everywhere across the country, and that will be ideal. But that would be in an ideal setup. As I said, in a country where there is a lot of criticism of the CBI, of the cases being pursued differentially and not on an even scale, then these things are bound to arise. Now, the states are protesting that the cases of corruption are proceeded against only the opposition leaders and not against those people within the powers that be, and also not against those who have shifted from the opposition to the ruling party. But Neeru, let me tell you something. While CBI was investigating one of the cases, because after all it investigates cases of corruption, all involving the central funds, the High Court in a particular case did say that it can investigate cases against corruption involving the central employees who are located in those states, because right now you cannot even do that. So once, I don't remember that particular case, but High Court certainly has given that decision. So I would say that that is good enough as a precedent to at least start with this, that all the central government who have, employees who are located in the states, at least they can be investigated against in such schemes. There is also the other part, that the central funds which are being used by the state agencies, of course, that cannot be investigated. Their state employees come under the state government. So given that situation, I don't think this would be the right move, because it's going to be a very contentious kind of idea, which I think states will not approve at all.
Right. But what would you really say? I mean, will this law, whenever it's rolled out, will this ensure impartiality and avert any feeling of powerlessness amongst the state governments, because the state governments already have been saying that this is an attack on the federal structure, and now that they will not need a general consent, they will not need any consent, and they will probe matters relating to national security and integrity. Now, how much of misuse angle, and of course the kind of feeling it leaves with the state governments, I would want you to comment on this.
See, NIA already has the jurisdiction of investigating terror cases across the country. And most of these cases have been without any problem. And NIA has done an excellent job also in here. But whereas CBI is concerned and the corruption cases are involved, then this political thing comes in. So in that respect, you can say loosely that yes, it may be an attack on federal structure. That is when the cases are being dealt with differentially at the level of the CBI. If, for example,
allow me, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but allow me to do that. Is it not like the duplication of work and powers as well? Like you said that NIA already is doing that job. Then why to give additional powers to CBI then? Is it really required?
Well, I suppose in the case of in the case of CBI, there might be certain cases like cattle smuggling, etc., which may impact national security, especially which is happening on the border states like West Bengal, because there was one of the, I remember a cattle smuggling case to the tune of crores, where in which a BSF commandant himself was involved in Raipur, and a lot of cash was found in that particular case. A lot of cash was also circulating in that cattle smuggling, which is a huge business. So in that respect, it does impact national security. But as far as the pure terror cases are concerned, I agree with you, and that is the most important part of national security perspective. In that respect, NIA is already doing that job. In the case of such cases, which also have implications of national security, it is linked with the corruption cases. If, for example, it's an absolutely fair game, if each one of them, that is, each one of the cases, are being dealt with in the same manner, then it's fine. So I have a suggestion, Neelu, for that. And the suggestion would be, which I think the states may be discussed with this point, that let all such cases, corruption cases, indulge in by the CBI. They do first in preliminary inquiry, and only after a solid inquiry, then the FIR is lodged and things like that. So let it be supervised not by the CVC but by the Lokpal, because if Lokpal also has the jurisdiction of investigating the highest in the land, and in fact the Supreme Court is also hearing that against the judges, can they do it. So in that respect, let Lokpal monitor the progress, and then they are going to see that which of these cases are with the CBI and whether they are being pursued with the same interest, the same vigor for all parties in all the states. That will be a solution.
Right. Now, I want to come to the second recommendation, and of course, that is related to the lateral entry. Now, what is exactly the panel said? And I'm going to quote that CBI should introduce lateral entry for specialists in cybercrime, forensics, financial fraud, and legal domains. And the panel has said that venturing into a domain that has been a no-go for the opposition. And the center had, of course, last year been forced to ask the Union Public Service Commission to withdraw advertisements for lateral recruitment of 45 senior posts in various ministries from the opposition, alleged a ploy to bypass reservations. How does this lateral entry into CBI then will really hold water then?
I think there is a difference between the CBI, which would, I think, rather welcome the entry of the specialists in forensic sciences and the other areas, unlike the bureaucracy. You see, the bureaucracy wants to control everything. I mean, the IAS officers do not want even the other services to be in key positions, nor do they want the non-IAS in other areas, even the specialists who have been taken in. I mean, there is not that kind of substantial work which they're allowed to take. This is perhaps the only country where the bureaucracy. Look at Niti Ayog, for example. Niti Ayog is headed by a bureaucrat. Members are also bureaucrat. Everything. There is no proper committee in India which is headed by a professional with all the powers. Unlike United States of America, where you see all the top brains are brought about to head the committees. In the case of CBI, I think even as an ex-police officer, I would welcome the move to have the forensic science experts, the cyber security guys, and things like that, the prosecution wing. So there is a difference, and I don't think the opposition should sort of oppose it, because it helps teeth to the CBI action in investigation, in prosecution, etc. Now, the second part which you asked is very important, and that is the direct entry. Now, there are pros and cons. If you take a direct entry, then you build up a cadre of CBI investigators and things like that. But there is a problem. If you are getting the CBI investigators, they are there for life. It is very difficult in our system to kick out people or to do anything long-winded departmental inquiries and things like that. Whereas when you get people on deputation, then since it is supervised by the IPS officers, those deputationists can be proceeded against. They can be sent back to the states. So that is why it has to be traded off against
No,
that.
but regarding the deputation, I'll just read out that portion, which is very, very significant since you mentioned about deputation, that regarding the direct recruitment, the panel has said that the deputation system has left the agency short-staffed. The reasons including manpower shortages in the state police forces themselves and the lack of incentives for state officers to seek deputation to the CBI. Now, another problem which they've cited is, of course, the administrative bottlenecks in processing nominations that delay appointments. What would you say to this logic, Mr. Azad?
I mean, I just laugh at it, Nilu. You know, it's like throwing the baby with the bathwater. Because you have problems in getting people on deputation, there are two reasons, right? One is that there is the problem in processing of appointments. Who has created this problem in processing of appointments? The bureaucrats, the babus. For example, if, for example, a chief of, after all, when you appointed CBI chief, you appoint with a lot of thinking, a lot of, and you expect that this man will lead the force with his integrity, with his dedication, and with his professionalism. So if he wants a particular assistant director or an SP, why shouldn't he be given straight away? Why should you go into numerous files and looking at his files and looking at various cases? Then you go to the ACC, then you go to the TTCC. Why should anybody? How is a bureaucrat to judge on the selection done by a CBI chief? In America, it goes like a whiff. Or even if you're having these processing, why can't you do it on a computer and do it in one day? That's what you. Secondly, if the state people are not coming here, why can't you make things in the CBI more welcome? Why don't you make the situation more ambient? Why do you expect every CBI officer with Desh Bhakti and Jan Seva to do 22 hours of work? Why should they do it? Why can't they do normal, hours of work? So, instead of trying to improve the bureaucracy, instead of trying to improve the conditions, instead of trying to make CBI more attractive, you're just trying to throw everything and have a direct cadre. How will that improve situation in any case?
Absolutely. So, I mean, will this move really help or not help? I'm still not able to understand. I mean, of course, you've given the challenges, but government is trying to project this as some kind of a huge reform which is going to improve the working of the CBI. Will it really be that case?
No, I don't think so. As I already said, trying to solve the problem of deputation is by taking a direct entry is hardly a kind of a solution. I mean, you already recruit a portion as within the CBI, and you already recruit another portion through the deputations. And I think it should remain like that. As far as the entry of the specialists is concerned, we would welcome that because it will add teeth to CBI investigation. The problem, Neelu, with the CBI is not with its investigative ability. CBI is one of the best organizations today, even now. The problem is that of the being the caged parrot. The problem is being, guided by politics to pursue certain cases fast and, not pursue. For example, look at even an ordinary case like Sushant Singh case. I had been shouting from the treetops from the very first day that, for God's sake, don't introduce this politics into it. But a case was instituted in Patna. It came here. Both the cases were given to the CBI. Now, after 5 years, it has been closed with what? That it's saying it is simple suicide, and that poor girl whose only fault was to love somebody, that is Ria, was incarcerated, and even ED got after her, narcotic control got after her, and CBI has now closed the case. Where does she get her life back? That's unfair.
Absolutely. No, that's very well explained. But the thing is that I was looking at some other recommendations of the panel, and there are a few things which probably might improve the functioning of the CBI. Like, say, for example, panel has advocated greater transparency to the CBI's functioning, asking that case statistics and the annual report be published on the agency website. Now, the centralized case management should allow public access to non-sensitive case details, which will enhance accountability, efficiency, and trust in operations of CBI. Now, my question to you is that, of course, it looks like a very good idea, but will they be open to the RTI as well? Now, supposing if somebody wants to know the details of a case, will they open it to RTI as well? Or they will cast aside that bit and then, bring up something which looks very rosy?
Well, the CBI has been removed from that RTI. In fact, it has been added to that list, which is exempt from answering any of the state police is not. So I don't think there is any disadvantage in giving out the status of a particular case. In fact, that's exactly the problem. If you pursue cases differentially, you will try to hide. Otherwise, you should be able to give the status of all the cases. What is the status of case against, for example, a ruling party member who has just come over from the opposition parties? So this is absolutely important, in fact, that the status report should be there. In fact, if you see in United States, only the other day, the US intelligence report for the year has also come out. I am of the feeling that even our intelligence agencies should put out their annual report. Why shouldn't the CBI do? Of course they should. They should bring in more transparency, and I totally agree with the House panel. In fact, the chief of the House panel has been an ex-police officer, IPS officer, Brijlal, a member of parliament from, I think, UP. So I fully agree with this idea.
But going back to the first recommendation of the general consent, they need a separate legislation. And I'm just wondering, because this could be a challenge if the report panel is adopted and it goes ahead, they bring in a legislation. Now, the states which are a no-go zone, now the states which have withdrawn the general consent, it's a long list: Bengal, Karnataka, Punjab, Jharkhand, Kerala, Telangana, Tamil Nadu, and Meghalaya. And these are all, except for Meghalaya, all these are opposition ruling states. So if at all this legislation comes up, and which in all probability might come up, so are we going to see these states challenging this legislation if at all it comes up?
Oh, yes. I mean, I think it will be clogging the courts. It'll go right up. They'll approach the Supreme Court. But in terms of the legislation, I don't know what opposition can be there if they say that if you're talking about the central funds being defalcated anywhere, and the CBI is asking for powers to investigate, what constitutional, accusations or what constitutional roadblocks can be there to that? That it should be fair. It is 100% true. But in itself, there doesn't seem to be any legal infirmity. Though I'm telling you what the problem is. The problem is this.
Yeah. All right. So my last question to you, Mr. Azad, is that overall, the recommendations which we have discussed, whether it is related to the lateral entry or the legislation or a separate cadre for the CBI, in general, what does it look like? Does it strengthen CBI, or is the rollout really going to have a number of challenges and weaken the foundations ultimately of the entire bureaucracy? Because I'm sure it will have an import on other bureaucrats as well.
Nilu, I think we should not waste time on, peripheral things. What should be the basic aim? The basic aim should be that the CBI should be fair, it should be professional, and it should be transparent. Now, for that, you certainly bring in specialists. That is most welcome. There is no need for bringing in a legislation, because an high court has already given a decision, and taking precedent, you can investigate the cases which involve central funds for central employees, even in the various states. Third, why try and bring in a direct entry when you can control the deputation? And if there are lesser deputationists, then why not create better conditions in the CBI, speed up the process of appointments? That is completely your fault. Why you go through long winded approach? Give the CBI chief all the powers. That is how it is all over the world. When you waste time on peripheral things, that is when you think in terms of legislations and catching your ear not straight but round your head.
It was a pleasure having you, Mr. Azad, on the program. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye.